Whereas for me, I'm one of, three of us that do what I do in Dubai.
You did something very interesting. You created...
Oh, they remember it for sure. It's unlike anything they've ever done in training, right? And the feedback is always the same. This is the most fun training I've ever done in my life. You think about real estate agents in Dubai, right? There's 30,000 licensed real estate agents, something like that, plus another 30,000 unlicensed. Well, if you want to be the number one in the world at something, you're going to have to.
Was there a specific trigger point that made you take the leap of saying, I'm not going to do this job anymore, I'm going to go in and start something for myself?
Burnout and unemployment.
Welcome everybody to this episode of Behind the Hustle. Today we have James from the real estate sector. Tell me a little bit about what you do, James.
Yeah, I am a sales trainer in Dubai's real estate industry. So what that means is I have a few different ways that I can help real estate agents in Dubai and any different company or brokerage, or even if they're freelancing, to improve what they're doing and get better at selling more real estate in Dubai.
So what does that mean exactly? What does your day look like if you actually go and train someone?
Yeah, so a lot of it will depend on the client, will depend on whether I'm working with a brokerage on that day. So if there's a brokerage that's brought me on, maybe we would have signed a contract for a day of training, a morning of training, 3 months of training once a week. It kind of depends on what they need. But that would mean I would go into, their office most of the time with their team. Sometimes it's a small portion of their team, 10, 15, 20 agents. Sometimes it's the whole sales team, which can be 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 people sometimes. And really kind of depending on what we've agreed to with that brokerage as far as the different type of sales training content that we're going to be covering with the team, then we'll have usually somewhere between, an hour and a half to a 3-hour training session with the team covering 1, 2, 3 different topics. And really the main part of my job is to bring something to the table that maybe either they've never gone through before, or that they have gone through, but they want it kind of from a fresh perspective. And the way that I try to do it is to really just make sure it's engaging and interactive. People don't want a presentation for 2 hours, right? People want a training session where it's interactive, it's competitive, it's fun. Ideally, I want everyone leaving having laughed multiple times and having, built a bit of a relationship with their colleague. So that's what I focus on doing as much as I can.
So if I can roll you back a little bit, what brought you to taking the step of becoming an entrepreneur? But what were you doing before this?
Yeah. Well, look, I've been in Dubai for 9 years. Like before this or before this?
You tell me your journey. What brought you to the point? So the whole point of this podcast series is to talk about what it is like to do a startup, the hustle behind it, what brings you to this jumping point of starting your own business. And we all have a story before it, right? Yeah. That brings us there. Yeah. What was your story?
Yeah, well, look, my story. So I came to Dubai as cabin crew with Emirates, like probably many people who are still in Dubai now doing other things. But then I've been in real estate for almost 7 years now. So I started off in training. I had a bit of an unconventional journey into real estate. Most people in real estate, they start off as a real estate agent or a broker. And then, as they move through different companies and become good brokers and close more deals and get more experience, then they might graduate into a sales manager role or starting their own brokerage or doing some coaching, whatever it is. For me, that was kind of the opposite, just because of the way the cards were played. I actually started off in training at Property Finder.
Was there a specific thing that made that happen comparing to everyone else? Because like you said, everyone else I see who comes here, they start out as a junior broker, right?
Yeah, I think, no, there's nothing that I did that led to that. I think it was just down to a network. I network well, I meet people, I remember people that I speak to. And so literally the way that happened is I met a guy when I very first moved to Dubai back in 2016. I met a guy in the plane. We were passengers next to each other, a guy from Geneva. I was flying from Geneva as well. And we met, his name was Alex, and we got talking for the whole flight, I think like 5 or 6 hours. We talked, got along well. He gave me his business card. I was moving to Dubai with Emirates. He was moving to Dubai with this company called Property Finder that I had never heard of, which is now the biggest prop tech in the Middle East.
Yes, it's very big.
And he was moving as the COO. So he gave me his card, got along great. I got my logins to Emirates Airlines 2 or 3 days later. He was the first email that I ever sent to him was, hey, Alex, nice to meet you on the flight. Have a good life, basically, right? Never spoke again for 3.5 years. And then when I was leaving Emirates, looking for a job here in Dubai, I just was networking like crazy for about 6 months. It was a tough job market at the time. I wasn't ready to get into entrepreneurship yet. I was, basically broke, just getting married. And so I needed an income. And so I was just networking like crazy, looking for any kind of opportunity. And I remembered this guy, Alex. So I went into my email, scrolled all the way back up to my Emirates email, found this email to Alex, reply 3.5 years later, right? Hey, Alex, you probably don't remember me, but I'm looking for a job. I'm here in Dubai. And he replied and said, all right, come into the office tomorrow. Let's have a chat. And so really, I ended up with a job with a pay cut from what I was doing before in an industry I knew nothing about, in a job description I didn't deserve, just because I had the guts to send some guy an email from 3.5 years before. So we can talk more about that later, but I think that's probably the one thing, right?
That rolls kind of very well into a lot of the topics that is about starting a startup. It's about actually going and doing something.
That's it.
Overcoming the fear and just taking that first step, right? So did you never have an entrepreneur in your stomach before this? That's something that spawned later?
No, I did. So I actually, when I studied back in Chicago for 4 years, I got a degree in marketing and entrepreneurship. So actually my degree is in entrepreneurship. Don't go get a degree in entrepreneurship. It's not something you learn at school. But that's what I did. So I guess there was, like, from a relatively young age, at least from the age of 18, there must have been something inside of me that said, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur one day. I don't think when I was 18, I had any idea what that meant. But it sounded cool. It's like, all right, well, I'll get a degree in that. I mean, really, I was getting a degree in basketball, right? But I ended up with a degree in entrepreneurship. So I think it was always in the back of my mind, but I had no plan, no strategy. I didn't know how that was going to end up happening one day.
If you think back at what you were feeling back then in school and you were thinking, well, I want to be an entrepreneur someday, I want to do something. Now you are an entrepreneur. You're doing your own freelance business. You're doing your own thing. What is very different from what you thought back then?
I don't know what I thought back then. I don't really remember if I had like a clear intellectual thought process about what entrepreneurship would look like. I think probably as a college kid, as an 18, 19-year-old kid, I probably thought entrepreneurship was all of a sudden you become the CEO of a corporation somehow and you own it. And I had really no comprehension of the things that need to happen between deciding to start a business and being the CEO with 100 employees. I just didn't have a category for that. It's not something I grew up around. It's not something I talked about as a kid. I didn't watch YouTube videos on it back in the late 90s. So I just didn't know.
Interesting. So if I can roll you back to if you remember, was there a specific trigger point that made you take the leap of saying, I'm not going to do this job anymore. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go in and start something for myself for the journey you're on today?
Yes, burnout and unemployment. I had worked a job for 2 years as a director of learning and development. So again, always in training, right? So from the time I got that job with Property Finder in 2019, pre-COVID, all the way through to about 1.5 years ago when I started my own business, I had been, in this realm of sales training in Dubai real estate in different companies and in different formats. So at the last one, I was the director of learning and development for kind of one of the biggest brokerages in Dubai called Axe Capital. And I had built the training program. I'd hired a team of agents. I'd built the whole online, the digital learning side of things. And we had grown the business very quickly thanks to our good recruitment team and then the good training team, from around 160 employees up to 850.
Wow.
In 2 years, in exactly 24 months. So that's miserable. Don't do that. It's a terrible way of growing a business. But I just burned me out, right? So I learned a ton through that process. It was really fun being in that massive growth phase in a corporation. But it was exhausting. And so I just left. I left with no plan. I didn't leave thinking I'm going to go start my own business. I just left because I needed a break. I knew I was somewhat employable. I didn't know if I would find another role like that with that, decent of a salary in Dubai, but I just didn't really care. I knew I just couldn't do it anymore. And so I left. My wife and I went traveling for about 3 months. We went to California for like a month, I think, and then Mexico for about 6 or 7 weeks. And then, during that time, I don't know how much you want me to get into the story of how that ended up happening, but I think the click moment for me was really when we were traveling. I put on LinkedIn. I'd been active on LinkedIn for maybe 4 or 5 years at this point, and I posted on LinkedIn that I had left Axe Capital. And by that time, I think I had a decent following, mostly in Dubai, probably mostly in real estate, around 10, 12,000 followers, something like that. I don't remember. And when I posted on LinkedIn that I'd left, I just got flooded with messages from other real estate companies in Dubai saying, hey, we're looking for a full-time trainer, a director of L&D. Let's have a coffee. And so I realized in that moment that it wasn't just 1 or 2. It was like 20, 30, 40 different companies reaching out to me. And so what I realized, before even thinking about entrepreneurship or starting a business, I just realized there is a need. And that really was, I think, the moment that launched me into this thought process of, hey, can I meet more than just one company's need at the same time? And that's what kind of got me launched on the journey.
I think you're touching on a very important thing that a lot of people who don't start, but they really want to do something, don't realize. Most of us, we do actually have a skill. We have something that can be sold. It can be a skill you can transfer to others, you can help others with, but they failed to realize it. You actually had the skill, but you realized by the outpouring of support of companies like, James, we know you are good. We want to, that spawned the idea for a business for you, because you realized, they actually want what I have. And I know what I'm talking about. And it's good to get that. You got a little bit lucky comparing to a lot of founders I've seen, because you got that by the journey you took, you got that validation from the market almost before taking the plunge.
Accidentally. Yeah.
Accidentally.
It's true.
But it comes from an important step, which is one of the most important things, that it's the one thing they actually teach correctly in business schools. You need to network. It's too much of a use of a phrase. Networking is not natural for most people. For some, it is. Myself, I've never been a good networker. I have skills. I'm very good at other things I do, but networking was never a strength.
Yeah.
So that's something I had to learn and work on. But that's doable. So did you have any fear of starting at that point? Was anything holding you back that you were like, if I do this, what can go wrong?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, look, I think at that point when I kind of had this realization that there is a need, I still wasn't really in the mindset of, well, let me go meet the need for all the companies. I was still in the mindset of, great, there's a need. I'm hireable. I'm an employable employee. Great. So that was the good news in and of itself, right? And I think that process didn't really change from I'm employable to let me actually try to solve this problem for people until I actually started saying yes to all these coffee interviews. So I went and had coffee for like a month with 30 different CEOs of businesses. And I think after having met many of those and realizing there's no way I want to work for them full time is when I was kind of, I think, forced into this uncomfortable place where I thought there might be this opportunity to, start my own business or become a freelancer. But then to finally answer your question, there was simultaneously as much, if not more, fear. I can't do that. I've never done that. I don't know. How would I do that? Right? Do I just, I don't know. Right? You get so much to figure out, so many questions you don't even know how to ask. So yeah, there's tons of fear to answer your question, which I think is good. I think there should be fear.
There should be fear. The trick is not to let the fear hold you back, right? So having worked with a lot of founders over 3 decades, it's kind of my specialty to help startup and founders to walk the steps that they do. Been doing it many times myself also. And one of my own flaws often is being held back of, well, if I do this, it might jeopardize something else. How do I pay my rent? How do I keep the relationships okay? How do I manage tomorrow, right? Will it work? It's a complete unknown, right? But overcoming that fear, you learn certain tools you need to, and it's just building blocks. You need to make yourself an action plan and some building blocks to say, this is what I'm going to go tomorrow morning and do. And I'm going to do that every day for the next 10, 20, 30 days to start building. A lot of people start in the wrong end. They start with planning out the entire journey. They start thinking, I need to create this product. It will take me 2 years to create it. You just need to get into the market and do step number 1. I do think personally that's one of the things that they always say that the army, the military trains well. Their purpose of getting up in the morning and making the bed, it's about creating momentum of the day. And a startup is a lot of the same. You can't think only day by day, but if you think too far, it's impossible for your brain to comprehend what you're going to do, especially when you don't have the experience yet. It's great to put the vision, but unless you take step number 1, nothing will ever happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think what I learned, and I actually learned a little bit of this from working in a couple of different tech fields. In prop tech, we did some of this. I did a little stint in fintech, and we did some of this. When you have a tech product, normally I think what most do, and maybe this is best practice, I don't know, is that when you want to launch a new product or a new service, you don't build the product or the service first. You first pitch the product or service as if it exists in like a waiting list format, right? And if the interest is there, then you go build the product for them or the service. Or you build an MVP maybe, right? Like a very minimal MVP that's not going to cost you a lot of resources. And so because of that, I think that's kind of what I started doing, although it wasn't a tech product, I was the product. But as I was going to meet all these different owners of companies, I kind of started pitching the service of me having my own training company without having a training company, without having ever done this as a freelancer. I'd done training, so like you said, I probably had the skill set, but I'd never actually done it. But as I had these conversations, I knew I wasn't gonna take a job with those companies. So I said, well, how about, it sounds to me, after asking them what their needs are, it sounds to me like maybe I can help you with some of these needs without working for you full time, maybe as a freelancer. And so I kind of started pitching that, again, not knowing. I had this fear that, no, there's no way anybody's going to want to pay me just for my time without being an employee. And turns out it worked out, right? And I had a few different owners very quickly within a couple of weeks saying, actually, that sounds like a good plan, right? You're going to charge me less. I'm still going to get the needs for my business. I don't have to, bring on a full-time employee and all the liabilities that brings on for a company.
You just touched on a very important topic for most startup companies. Your journey is perfect. It's what I would advise anyone to do. It's actually a very American model comparing to a European model. In Europe, we used to build things for 3 years in the basement and then put it in the market. And by the time you put it in the market, you realize, oops, someone built something cheaper, not as good, but it's much cheaper and faster already. So I'm too late to the market. American way is like you're saying, it's what they're better at. It's like, I'm just going to go and sell it to see if there's interest. They might put up a landing page, sell it under a different name, see is there interest, do I get leads, to validate. And you did the same, but in the real world scenario, right? But you touched on something very important. It's pricing. And this is where also a lot of people, they're scared of going into the market and talking to the client because they have the fear that the client will always push them down on the price. And if they fall for that trap, the problem is how do you ever price yourself up, right? So I have another freelancer I do help out, and he fell into that trap by accident. We're trying to help him out of it, but he would price himself down for every job he did per day basis. Now no company wants to pay more. And he's massively underpaid for the skill he actually has, right?
Interesting.
So for him to be able to get out of that, he has to basically cut all his clients and repackage himself completely because his skill is worth much more. So how did you tackle, if you did tackle it, or is it something you're struggling with to get the right pricing for what you do?
Yeah, ChatGPT. Ask ChatGPT, what am I worth before you go sell yourself to anybody? That's what I did. But also, I think, this is what I tell people. When people ask me, was going to university for 4 years worth it? I tell them, well, I learned one thing in university. And I really did. I remember I had a professor. Her name was Dr. Martin, something like that. A genius. Yeah, she was, I think, VP of marketing for Procter & Gamble for 25 years, something like that. And she taught a lot of my business classes in university. And we did a full semester simulation, a digital simulation of running a business. And it was simulating basically running the first smartphone companies. So it was basically simulating like Apple, Samsung, Nokia, BlackBerry at the time when the iPhone came out, right? And so, they split the class into teams and we all had our login every week and we had to make business decisions and research and development and pricing and sales and product and go-to-market strategies and all this. So it was really boring and tedious. But I remember the one thing, we did quite well as a team. There were 4 of us. And we did everything right, research and development. We were going the Apple strategy, building the best product on the market, and we ended up doing very, very well. And I remember there was one specific week out of a whole semester, so 6 months, right? We're trying to win this simulation. And there was 1 week where we had to decide. Finally, we had this product, the best product on the market. By far, we had to price it. And I remember suggesting to my team with too much confidence, as I always have, hey, we should just go the cost and add 10 or 20%. And I remember another guy on the team said, no, we should go times 10 on the cost. And I ended up winning the argument, as I usually do. So we went cost plus 10 or 20%, which means we did really well for about 3 days. And then everyone else took our tech, copied it, sold it for twice the money, and we lost. We were dead last by the end of the semester, all because of one thing, underpricing ourselves. And so that's the one thing that I've taken away from that over the last decade is just, when you're going to price something, whether it's a product, a service, whatever it is, take your cost, multiply it by a factor of, whatever is reasonable in that market. And so that kind of taught me, along with ChatGPT and along with talking to a few other people and realizing that I actually have a bit of a unique skill set that there's not a whole lot of in Dubai, to price myself what seemed to me like being very high. Because it's hard, like this imposter syndrome, surely I can't be worth that much money. Me? What am I going to add to any team or product or service? And getting rid of that and saying, no, on the market, what am I actually worth? So I would just say talk to people, get advice. Don't just price yourself where you think you belong because you probably are worth more than that.
Do you have any mentors in Dubai?
Not official mentors, but I have people that I call for advice. Yeah.
That is, I think, a very important part of the journey. But it's about finding the right mentors who can actually support you and give you the right advice.
So there's one guy in Dubai that I call for a bunch of business advice because he's basically done exactly what I'm doing, but just 15 years earlier. So he's basically been through this he now owns his own training company. He's got a team of employees. So although that's not exactly my aspiration to do copy paste, he's been through a lot of what I've been through. So that's super helpful.
Interesting thing with the pricing that you talked about is you never technically actually did sales. You're training sales, but now you have to sell.
Yeah.
How did you manage that shift?
Yeah, good question. I had done some sales, not in Dubai real estate. I'd done sales in the past. How do you manage the shift into selling your own service? I mean, I don't really sell my own service the way I train other people to sell their service or product as a real estate broker. Why? That's a good question. I think maybe simply because I don't have to. Because most of the people that I train, so if you think about real estate agents in Dubai, right? There's 30,000 licensed real estate agents, something like that, plus another 30,000 unlicensed. So you're one of literally thousands of people that essentially can offer the same service as you, maybe not as well as you, but it's the same service. So you're going to have to figure out how to have something unique about you. Whereas for me, I'm one of 3 of us that do what I do in Dubai, and we're all 3 very different in how we approach it.
So you're saying in your specific field,
correct,
there's only 3 really doing what you're doing in Dubai?
That I know of. There's 3 of us who are freelance sales trainers in Dubai real estate.
30,000 current brokers, 30,000 non-licensed probably.
Yeah.
And how many probably brokerages?
Probably on paper, there's 6,000 licensed brokerages, but actual brokerages with an office and a team of more than 3 or 4, probably 1,000.
Do you think some of them do in-house training well, like the big ones, like Damak, MR? They have their own, because they would probably have their own in-house training, right? Routine.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so I mean, there's some so developers and brokerages are kind of 2 separate worlds. I'll work with both depending on who calls me. Your top 15 developers do have their own in-house sales training teams. And their salespeople do something very different than an actual broker does. They're just selling one product and usually doing so by building relationships with independent third-party agents. So it's a little bit of a different environment. Whereas the actual brokerage world of Dubai, out of those 1,000 brokerages, let's say, there's probably 20 that have some sort of an in-house trainer. Out of those 20, there's probably 6, maybe 7 that actually have a decent training program. That I know of. I've built 2 of them. So that leaves 5 built by other people that I think are pretty good based on the reputation in the market, which leaves obviously just a ton, 1,000 plus, where they just have no training. So
you're selling this service currently to companies?
Correct. Mostly, yeah.
Wouldn't there be a lot of people who wants to get into this market, who are not companies, who are brokers or single standing people or freelancers, who would need these services?
Who would need them?
Yeah.
Yeah, like agents who would need sales training services.
Agents who could take that sales training for themselves.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But at that moment, of course, you have to figure out how to sell it to them without pricing it completely differently in a different method, right? Yeah. Is this something on your roadmap, something that you're planning in your journey?
Yeah, good question. I'm trying to get away from time for money and going toward product for money. So the problem with one-on-one coaching, if you're doing it face-to-face like this, if I'm coaching Peter, Dubai's best real estate agent, it's quite literally time for my, hey, let's do a 45-minute coaching session and I have to charge you for that time. Well, one, it's going to be much better for me to charge a company for time with 30 agents for an hour session compared to doing that with 1 agent where they're going to have to pay me the same amount. So it's not quite as viable for me financially to do that is what I found. I've actually done a couple. I still get a lot of calls and messages from agents saying, hey, do you do one-on-one coaching? My answer is always, yes, here's my pricing. Knowing full well that 99% of them are going to say, well, I don't want to pay that much for a one-on-one session, which is normal. But if they say, fine, great. If they see the value in that, and there are agents out there who do, fine. I'm more than happy to put time and effort into that. But a large majority of what I do is going to be for a company. So is that on the roadmap? If I can find a way to turn that digital, where an agent would get one-to-one attention digitally, or an agent can kind of get a group digital session with me through the format of a Zoom call or a webinar or something on a regular basis, then yes, absolutely.
I think you couldn't be at a better place in the history of time to try to put it into that format, because we have the availability, we have all the social media, you have all the people growing up today has a completely different access to information. It's much easier to build a personal brand, to get out there, to sell the information. It might not be the most natural step for people to do it, but I've never seen for decades this opportunity we have now to do it at a very low cost. We can move much faster and much cheaper than we did before. And Dubai is kind of like a melting pot for all, call it gurus, selling their courses, selling everything. But between all the gurus, you have tons of really legitimate people who sells actual services, actual products, who really can coach you. So in a personal opinion, if anyone would ask me today, I would not tell them go and be a consultant, start in the regular consultancy and try to land clients one by one. I would say go the digital route, use LinkedIn, use Instagram, use the channels you have and build. But you need a way to sell it. But the great thing with that, there's so many tools online. Today, you literally can put together a company in 7 days. You can have all the tools for billing, for invoicing, for tracking your clients, and it will literally cost you a couple of $100 a month.
Yeah.
And you're up and running. Well, back in the day, you had to really, how do I manage it? Either paper and you fall behind and you try to keep up with it and everything.
Yeah.
You mentioned something interesting earlier about AI. How do you feel this is helping you in the everyday now?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I live on ChatGPT, which is terrible, but I do. I don't think it's terrible. It's just the way of the world. I think it's helpful in that it creates some sort of a standard of knowledge for clients that I work with. So I'm not in some world of my own where I'm the only person that now knows anything about the learning and development and training sphere. You know, I've literally done this with some of my clients before, especially around pricing, right? Like if they come back to me and say, oh, well, you know, you're super expensive. I say, okay, fine. Here's a prompt, right? And I just send them, how much should a specialized professional sales trainer in Dubai real estate charge per hour if they have 7 years of experience and have trained over 3,000 agents in Dubai? And I send it to them. I say, put this into your ChatGPT, so there's no bias from my end, and just see what it says. And that's won me a couple contracts before because they asked ChatGPT and they realized, oh, okay, this is actually what that should cost in the market. So that's one very specific way that it's helpful for me, probably not what you were thinking. But also I think for me, just to think through, you know, my training content, it's useful to think through how I can adapt that to maybe certain nationalities, certain cultures in Dubai, certain different groups of people based on kind of what their primary activities or client bases are like. It can help me think through, examples or analogies in training, how to make it more applicable to them.
So it's augmenting your day. It's making you faster.
Yeah, augmenting is a good, it definitely makes me faster in 1,000 other ways as well, for sure.
Same with me.
Yeah.
I've never had a tool in my life who can make so many mundane tasks so much faster for me. So it would be stupid not to use it. That would be a Kodak moment for big companies if they don't implement it. There is a way to move too fast and into the unknown without having any track of what you're doing. But to let it augment all your tasks you're doing on a regular basis, I think the trick is to keep the humanity in it. Too many people will send me an email that you clearly see that this wasn't even written in. If you sent me an email tomorrow, not written by you, by talking to you today, I would know. I would be like, this is not James talking, right?
And I still think, it's so helpful in so many ways, and yet I can count the amount of sales training contracts I've signed with companies on one hand where I have not gone to meet them face to face over a cappuccino first. So it's not going to replace. You don't trust somebody because of an email they sent you. You trust somebody when you meet them, you sit with them face to face, you hear them talk about what they specialize in, what they're good at, and then you agree to do business with them.
For corporates, businesses, absolutely.
Yeah.
There is no other way, I think. It can replace a lot of it, but especially like a market like we are in here, I think it's very important.
Yeah.
I do think being as few as you are in your specific field, I have a feeling in me somewhere that no matter what you're pricing yourself, you're probably worth 3 or 4 or 5 times that because there's no one else to go to, right? But then it comes into the fear of, if I do that, will I ever get a client, etc. It's a very hard decision to make.
Correct. It is. And it's about, I can price myself high and have less clients and make just as much money because they'll pay me the difference, but then I have less clients.
Not necessarily. I've seen a lot of use cases where by them pricing this more exclusively, they actually get more clients because it brings more credibility to what they do.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, well, maybe you can look at my pricing strategy after and tell me.
Anytime. We'll meet over a coffee, which is your specialty.
Face-to-face coffee with our ChatGPTs open, and we can talk about my pricing strategy. Yeah. Well, what about you? Like when you've launched products or services, how have you thought through pricing it? Like how much work goes, especially I guess like you're mostly in the tech field, right? That's your background in startup in the tech or finance world, right?
Not really. The last 6, 7, 8 years has been mostly tech and fintech, but I've been through all industries. I helped companies from real estate myself to construction companies to e-commerce to sales companies to lately it's been a lot in the fintech space, tech companies before that. Pricing is the most difficult thing to get right, especially when you're creating something which is a little bit new. And then there's been this wave for many years that your competitor tries to get out of the market by pricing themselves lower than you. I think a good example of the one company in the world who didn't do that, who succeeded, was Apple. Who just said, we're going to do the exact opposite. Every time we're more expensive, we're just going to go more and more and more expensive. But they managed to build a complete ecosystem around that and the brand affinity and everything around it. That is used to be harder, but today it's easier because of the connection we can have with the world through social media channels that we didn't have access to before. The opportunity, like you said, you've been strong on LinkedIn, right? The access you get on LinkedIn, which is technically a social media, even though it used to be more business oriented, is something you could not have 10 years ago. You could not reach those people. They would never hear of you. You would have to go knock doors on a real estate agency. Hello, I'm James. I do this. Would you like to? I don't have time to talk to you. I've been in a lot of the companies I help. I am the buyer. And if you knocked on my door, if I don't have time at the moment, you don't have time in your day to take the time out for it. You need the network, you need the connectivity, they need to know your face from somewhere. You need to either come through a reference or you need to know you from somewhere. You can knock on the door, but then if you knock on the door, you need to create some sort of unique advantage why they should talk to you. We had a kid recently to one of our companies who sent out of the blue a package right to the office, and it was like a very nice dressed box. And you open it, there was a personalized handwritten letter to the founders of the company saying, I'm really impressed with what you do. I really like what you do. And I love your brand. I love this. And I would really like to work with you guys. He was selling performance marketing. And the box was full of muffins. I guarantee you, they still remember him. Yeah. They ate the muffins and they remember him. Of course, he wanted to sell a service. They were like, let's hire the kid. I was like, I'm sure he's selling you a service. And he was selling a service. But it was a great way to create a differentiator, right?
For sure. A memory as well,
yeah. Do you have in your industry, you think, what's your unique advantage?
My unique advantage. Well, I mean, one, I think we talked about is just that there is not much competition. So, again, that's not an advantage I created. That's just the advantage of where I find myself. Which I guess leads me to, I tell people often, not every playing field is fair. So if you do want to become an entrepreneur, if you want to start a business and you know which business you want to start, ask yourself the question, are you in the right location for that to have the highest chance of working? Or do you maybe need to relocate yourself somewhere else where that has a higher chance of working? And back to the fear thing, people have a fear of that. Well, I don't want to leave. I know this place. This is my home. This is okay. Well, fine. But then maybe it's not the right place for you to start that specific business, right? So I think being in the right place in the right industry at the right time is a bit of an unfair advantage that I have. And I think also the unfair advantage that I probably have in training specifically, just because it's not something that I worked on. I grew up watching my dad be a public speaker. My dad's a pastor. Has been for 45 years. And so I think just watching my dad all the time speak in public, speak to groups of 100, 200, 300, sometimes 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people without knowing it, when you're 4 or 5, 6 years old, you just take that in as like a norm. That's just normal. That's just how people communicate. That's what we are in the Glass family. And so I think that's helpful for me as I get up in front of crowds of 30, 40, 50 people, 100 to 300, 400 people sometimes. Although I still have that fear of standing up in front of a crowd of people. I think anybody who's any good at public speaking should have that fear a little bit because it means you care. But I think it is just helpful. It's an advantage that I have I see other people just petrified of the idea of having to think and speak at the same time, So I think those two things probably give me a bit of an unfair advantage.
For most people, it requires practice. Yeah. They just have to expose themselves and keep doing it over and over and over. It's like talking to a camera. It's not natural for almost anyone. But if you keep doing it and you start focusing on what you're really talking about, Sooner or later you forget the camera and you start being good at what you're doing, right?
It's very similar,
Yeah.
100%. So if you were me, based on this conversation so far, what would you maybe point out one or two things that you've noticed? Maybe two things. Maybe one thing that you've noticed that it seems like from what you hear James has done well, and maybe one thing where, hey, I think there might be some room for improvement in this area.
I think there's a lot of things we haven't talked about. You usually have a longer session to discover on that. But I do think you should use, we touched on it earlier, there's so many brokers, which means there's so many people who wants to be brokers. It sounds like an easy field to get into. There's how many TV shows do we have in the world about brokerages, right? And everyone dreams about becoming a broker. I think one of the best examples is Ryan Serhant in New York, who really created this massive global, almost a social media brokerage, but they're selling, they're doing well. And he's giving access to people who could never get a job as a broker somewhere else. Yeah. And a lot of them do great. They actually do well. But what he does, he sells training, right? He sells them courses. He sells them access to a community. And I think that's very packageable for someone like you. You can package your training in a digital format. There's plenty of platforms that handle the payments, the videos, everything for you. You need to record it, of course. You strike me as quite structured. By being able to talk to groups of several hundred, you have a structured way of approaching it. So you could probably quite easily structure training content, but you need to level it. You need to have an access level for a certain price. And then you need to blast that all across your social media, not necessarily running paid ads. Paid ads can be great, but it doesn't necessarily reach the right audience. You already have an audience. It's about putting your face more out there. You, by being one out of probably 3 or maybe a couple more people who does what you do, you are the leading voice in your space. And you have a very specific skill. You train brokers, right? If I was someone who wants to get into that space, I'm trying to get a job as a broker, but I don't want to be the startup broker who, you came in with 50 others, 2 of you will get a job, and then I want to put myself apart, right? If I can go and take some training and know something before I go to that company, I would take that training. I would take that course if I trust the voice speaking to me. And you have a great way of speaking. You have a great voice. You know your stuff. So I would probably put in your journey to package a course that you can put online. But I think what's important is to package that into, it has to come with some access. That doesn't mean one-on-one access because that's time. Access can be managed in groups. I have other people I work with who does this very well by scheduling weekly calls. They have, for example, a 2-hour call every Friday where they gather 20, 30, 40, 50 people. Some people just listen, some consume, some people start asking questions, and you create a community. Then maybe you create a WhatsApp channel or a Telegram channel or a Discord channel around that, where people, what happens typically in these groups is that people start helping each other. You're just the voice who's there to help them navigate certain things, because it's impossible for you to talk to all of them yourself, right? If you get enough people following and wanting to buy it. But I think that can bring, call it an evergreen flow of income, and you can reach a much larger audience. Because even if you have 6,000 brokerages, there is a limit to how many will buy. Because I understand exactly where you come from. Like I said, I used to very often be a buyer. And if I'm the buyer in a company, I have a boss, and he says, why would I pay this much for training? We are already doing great. No matter what you come to me, I'd be like, no, James, I'm not going to pay that. But so you have another angle to play. Doesn't mean you should give up the business you're doing because you're doing it great. And it gives credibility that this company wants to have you in for training. And I've seen your content. You work with great companies. You get great feedback. Which brings me to another question, by the way. You did something very interesting. You created, what did you create? You created basically a board game.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, just part of trying to figure out how to diversify my training portfolio for brokers. And, you know, in the training field and learning and development as an industry, we talk a lot about gamification, right? And that's trying to figure out how to make learning fun, right? How to turn it into a game. And the psychology behind that is just that's how kids learn, right? When you think about infants, 1 or 2 year olds, toddlers, well, what do we give them to learn? Well, we give them games, right? Try to figure out how the triangle goes in the triangle and the circle in the circle, move the numbers around. And so from that, we kind of see that is the best way for human beings to learn from a young age. And then we do a lot of that through school. And then for some reason we get into university and all that stops. and then we just have to sit there and be bored for 3 hours. And so, we talk a lot about gamification. It's becoming a thing over the last decade, trying to figure out how to gamify learning, especially digitally. But I thought, well, no, I don't want to gamify it only digitally. And we're going to do a lot of that online, but I want to gamify it in person. So how can we do that? And I thought about some other board games that are not for training purposes, but are based on real estate. And I thought, okay, well, is there a way to make something like that, but with the purpose of training agents to get better at selling property in Dubai? So that's what I did. It took me about a year, me and my poor wife, creating prototypes and coming up with structures and, rules. And it's, the first stage of creating something like that is the hardest part. But yeah, so we did. So it's called the Dubai Broker Simulation.
Interesting.
You can get 8 different real estate agents sitting around a table going through a simulation. Takes about 3 hours to go through a full simulation together.
It's like the length of a game of Monopoly, basically.
But, well, yeah, I remember a couple of games of Monopoly going for like 2 days as a kid. But yeah, the average Monopoly game.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fun. It's engaging. People laugh. It's super competitive. You get experienced agents yelling at each other, but also having a good time, closing real deals, making fake money. So it's fun.
What's the feedback you get from the seniors of the company for doing that, comparing to the normal speeches, talking, bringing something digital? You went analog. How do they respond?
Yeah, well, it depends at which stage. When it's at pitch stage and pricing stage, they look at me like I'm crazy for pitching them a training simulation at the price that I do, because they're expecting it to be, I can go on Amazon and buy Monopoly for 200 dirhams. So why would I pay you, 10 times that or 20 times that for something that looks like Monopoly? Well, it's not. It's a very niche, unique training tool that has over 1,000 hours of creation time into it to help your team get better at selling property, where you're going to have an ROI of probably 10,000% if it works. So that's the pitch, but it makes it much harder for the pitch that it's analog, like you say, that it's physical. But then after I actually successfully close that pitch, and that's where I guess I go a little full salesperson on them. But then after we actually go through it with their team, everyone loves it, right? Everyone's having a great time. It helps kind of the whole, if you can take, 3 or 4 simulations at the same time, so you can have 25 people going through the simulation in a room.
And I bet you they remember it.
Oh, they remember it for sure. It's unlike anything they've ever done in training, right? And the feedback is always the same. It's the most fun training I've ever done in my life. And it's really good for all the brokers to then kind of get a reset on how we actually work within this company, which is in a very structured way, using the CRM correctly, following up. And so the feedback overall is excellent. Some companies have taken it on full time on like a 12-month subscription, so they can use it in-house with their agents. So it's good. But again, it's just like any new product. It's about convincing the decision maker that there is value in that product or service.
It's part of your training structure. It's not technically a freestanding product. It's part of the package you're selling them, right?
It depends. Well, my package is very customized to the brokerage, so it depends. Sometimes it is included, and I encourage them to include it especially if it's a secondary.
Yeah,
brokerage.
but I mean, you don't really sell it as a standalone. I'll send you a game, manage.
Well, no. I actually don't sell them at all. They're mine. They can take them on a subscription basis.
Yeah.
I'm the only person that I know of that has a subscription for an analog product. But,
so now you know, guys, if you want to buy this game, it's not available.
That's it.
It makes it more valuable.
It does. It's more unique.
Yes. Yeah. See, you have another unique, unfair advantage.
I do have an unfair advantage, yeah.
And interesting when you said how much time that actually and skill that went into creating it.
Yeah.
This wasn't something you sat down with ChatGPT for a weekend.
No.
And just created, right?
No, and it's also expensive to create something analog. People think, oh, well, because it's, cardboard and paper, it must be way cheaper than creating an app. No, it's actually way cheaper today to create an app than it is to go create a physical product and have it produced, and then graphic design, and then printing and producing, and different phases of trial and error. So it's incredibly challenging, and it's awesome.
How is work-life balance different, and is it what you expected starting out for yourself, or is it completely different? Work-life, exactly. Work-life balance.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you definitely work harder when you work for yourself. But you also work on your own time. So there are times where even though you're working harder and work-life balance kind of goes out the window, you can, if you need to, just say, hey, I'm taking Tuesday morning off and we're going to go to the beach, or we're going to go do whatever we want to do. Or, if you need to, you can go have a coffee at 2 p.m. on a Thursday with a friend or with your wife. And so in that way, I think it provides a different type of work-life balance, assuming that whoever's listening to this is either an employee or is in a similar position to me. So I think it's just about it's about what you value, and it's also about setting expectations that, you know, you don't become an entrepreneur and all of a sudden have 4-day weekends, but you also don't have to become an entrepreneur and work 22 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? Like you just need to be able to set those boundaries, set expectations, and enjoy the time that you have off more. Working also doesn't feel quite as much like working when you're an entrepreneur, at least to me. Maybe that's not everyone's experience, because you're working for yourself. I'm not working to build a program or a training program or a company or revenue for someone else. I'm doing it to try to do that for myself, for me and my wife and my family. And so in that way, working is a little bit more gratifying, for lack of a better word. So it's okay if there's a little bit less work-life balance, I think.
I do think you're touching an important topic that I've seen a lot of people that grinds themselves to the ground is they get so busy just working.
Yeah.
So what happens is, my advice to everyone is the first thing you have to do when you have any product you plan it, you have to sell. Even if it's already gone, you said it, you have to go and sell it first and foremost. Yeah. Without selling, you have no validation. You don't know if there's a market. You have to fail fast. You want to succeed, but by succeeding, you fail often and fast. Yeah. So you reach what you want to do, right? And a lot of people they fail slow because, but it's true. Because basically they said, oh no, I have so many emails to answer and I need to do this, I need to manage this. And what happened was they were not able to keep up with organizing and managing their work and their action plans. So they get swamped by all the emails, customer service, returns, whatever they're dealing with, right? And I think for that purpose, having AI to help you augment your day, maybe picking the right AI tools to automate things for you, I've never seen a better time and opportunity than we have now. Yeah. And I advise everyone to really look into that so that you don't end up in, it's the same. Let's say you went out and started courses or something and you treat it like you've been doing today, and tomorrow you get 1,000 sales. But 1,000 sales, you get a lot of text, feedback, emails, people wanting to answer questions. If you haven't automated that at the right point, you will drown, right? And it's very hard. You hear about you need to do good customer service. Customer service, there's nothing more important than customer service in any company you deal with. I think the best example in the world that I've seen the latest 10 years is coming from fintech space the last 7 years. It's Nubank in Brazil. One of the 3 founders is a lady who her passion in life is Disney. So apparently you go to her house, they did an interview with her, CNBC or something, went to her house. Her house looks like Disneyland inside with dolls and everything. Everything in the Mickey Mouse is everywhere and so on. She said, I'm going to bring that into, she runs the customer service and the experience of being a customer with them. She said, coming to us as customers should be like going to Disneyland. And they succeeded. It's the only fintech/bank in the world where customers goes online on social media and says, I want to marry my bank. Wow. And it proves how important it is to put the customer first. But then you have to have the systems to manage it, because there's nothing worse than sending 3 emails and trying to call the company 10 times and texting them and not getting a reply or not getting an answer to your to what you're asking, right?
You're making me wonder if there's like 12 things I haven't automated that I should automate. Probably. We'll have another coffee sometime.
So you touched on something when you made your game. You mentioned that you had a lot of help from your wife. So you're a husband and wife team. How did you manage to balance going from being employed to being an entrepreneur? That would be because you were employed when you got married.
Correct.
So that's a quite big shift in the daily life of things and responsibilities. As a household, you start thinking about the bills, the payments, how you're managing, what's happening.
This is a really big question. It opens so many doors, but they're important ones, I think, especially if we're trying to give advice to someone who's maybe employed and thinking about going into entrepreneurship. I think there's some really important things. So, I mean, for us, when we got married, we were both employed, both had an income. Right after we got married, maybe 8 months after we got married, COVID hit. I lost my job. My wife technically kept her job, but lost about 80% of her income. So we were stuck. I was unemployed for 8 months. And she was in that position pretty much that whole time. So we were making on average, about $1,500, $2,000 a month, which in Dubai,
Dubai, that is not a lot of money. Dubai can be quite an expensive place.
So I think we were just maybe paying our rent with that and left with pretty much nothing else, which is fine. We had some savings, which kind of opens up the second door, right? And we'll come back to the marriage thing. Entrepreneurship, make sure you have financial literacy and wisdom before getting out into entrepreneurship. In other words, if you can't manage your finances, when you have a job and a monthly salary hitting the bank to the point where you're saving a significant portion of that and living within your means for an extended period of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, then you probably shouldn't get into entrepreneurship, because all of a sudden that income's going to disappear, your savings will disappear if you have any, and you'll be in a position where you can't actually do your passion project that you want to work on. So if you're watching this, you want to get into entrepreneurship and you're living paycheck to paycheck and not saving money, you're not ready.
I like how you phrased it, because it's I'm not used to hearing that phrase. You call it, you need the financial literacy to do it. Yeah. Usually people just talk about you need to have this much savings, you need to do it like that. I like the angle of financial literacy.
Yeah, well, if you can't manage your own bank account when you know exactly how much money is hitting your bank every month, then you're definitely not going to be able to manage it when 1 month or 2 months or 3 months or 4 months in a row you literally have zero income, and then all of a sudden you get a $25,000 paycheck because you hit your first contract, which is exactly what entrepreneurship is like. So if you can't manage a monthly income, you're not going to be able to manage that.
It's an interesting, it's a little bit different topic, but it's an interesting thing I've seen over the years is I see so many entrepreneurs and they want to save on what I call the wrong thing. They start a company and they were like, I'm going to do this. I need to buy this equipment. I need to book this meeting room. I need to do this flight to this client. I need to do all these things. And then they say, I need an accountant.
Right.
Like, no, accountants are expensive. I can do it myself. And they have no clue what they're doing, right? My advice is always the same. I ask them, so what is, even if you sell your hours, what is your hour worth? What do you get from a client? And typically when they price themselves, it turns out by selling 2 more hours of their time per month, they can pay for a professional accountant to take care of all that. And I never quite managed to connect in my head why they don't see that. It's much easier for you to go out and try to sell 2 more hours of your time in 1 month than sitting night after night after night trying to match numbers and books and accounts.
If that's not your strength.
That you don't know how to do. You will do it wrong. You'll get a problem with your taxes. You'll get a problem with your bank account. You'll miss some bills. You'll do something wrong. And it's not only accounting. They always save on the wrong stuff. Your goal, your job is to go out and make money. Yeah. To bring revenue to the company, bring traction, bring brand awareness, bring revenue, and then pay other people who's best at what they do to manage those things for you. Yeah. Doesn't mean lose control. Don't let someone else manage your bank account, of course. Keep things under your control. But let other people who's good at what they do, be good at it, right?
Yeah, 100%, for sure. And it's hard to know at the beginning. Back to the mentorship topic, right? Like, what should you save money on? I, by nature, just kind of want to save money on everything. So I am that guy, right? Thankfully, I have know nothing about accounting. My wife does, so it's okay. But for me, I've just seen, I think, especially being in real estate over the last 5 or 6 years, I've seen how much money you have to spend to make money. And so there's certain sectors of my business where I just don't blink twice. I'm like, all right, we're going to go spend, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10,000 dirhams on this. No, not having a guarantee that it'll pay off, but knowing that if I don't do it, it definitely won't pay off, right? And so there's some again, back to the fear, all these topics are linked, right? So I think that, financial literacy is the first part. But back to, we didn't really talk about the spouse question because I got distracted by the money, because I think they're linked, right? And by the way, if you are married and your spouse doesn't have financial literacy, like, both of you need to have it, is the point. At least you both need to be on the same page, in my opinion. Because if one person, has an idea of how they're going to run the business and handle the finances and where they're going to spend money within the business to make sure that it actually works, and the other person has a very different idea of what that should look like, that's just a disaster waiting to happen, either in the business, in the marriage, or both. So you need to be on the same page. Which page that is doesn't matter as much, I guess, as at least being on the same one. My wife is incredibly supportive. I would say if your spouse is not exactly on the same page and like your number one cheerleader and supporter for you to go do this, then at least wait and figure out why.
Yeah.
And it may be valid and it may not, and it doesn't really matter if it's valid or not. It doesn't matter if they're wrong and just more scared than you are, because if they're not behind you, it's going to be exponentially harder than if they are behind you. So figure out, is it something that you can do? Is it because we don't have enough savings in the bank for her, him or her to be comfortable with you making this decision? So I would just say, make sure that you're on the same page, because when you are, then it becomes really fun. And so
Every
we
day
are.
is much easier.
And our day is much easier.
Yeah.
And your spouse can be incredibly helpful. So like my wife works with me, right? She helps in so many ways, like accounting, that, you know, I'm not going to do the accounting. I don't remember. I think I failed accounting in university. It was the one thing I was terrible at. I don't know why. I love math. I just couldn't do accounting. And so she handles all that. And I think it's also important. We didn't do this before because I didn't know. But now I'm able to give this advice. Figure out what your spouse's strength is. Figure out what they're good at, what they're passionate about. Because if you're going to try to just like take everything that you're not good at and push it on them, or what you don't have time for and push it on them, well, if that's not their strength and they're not passionate, they're going to get worn out.
Then outsource.
Both
of you go and make some extra money to outsource it.
100%. And so that's something that we didn't do well, my wife and I at the beginning. Whatever I can do, like I know what I'm good at, I know what I have time for, and everything else is like, all right, here, you can do that. That didn't go very well. And pretty quickly we realized, okay, you're not your strength. We're going to outsource that or just not do that, or I'll figure it out. And other things that I was trying to do, well, again, we just realized accidentally over time, that's not my strength and that's actually her strength. So you have that. And she did it far better, far more efficiently than I would have done it, which then freed me up to do other things. So just figure out what are your strengths, what are you good at, and having someone else that can help you and support you is an absolute game changer.
I think the support is it's very important that both people are on the. It doesn't mean you don't have to work together and help each other, but you need to be on the same boat. You need to be heading in the right direction together, so you're both aware of it. One of the people I really think that I watch a lot in this space is Stephen Bartlett from Diary of a CEO.
Yeah.
He has a quite interesting take on relationships.
If he's watching, he's invited as the next guest, right?
Yeah, I need to have a few more episodes before he will come probably, but he's absolutely invited at any time. But he talks a lot about how hard it is to balance relationship if you really, really go for being an entrepreneur. And that is extremely true. But I do think you have to, if you reach the stage of life where you're married, you have to balance it a little bit differently, because he is a guy who basically works 24/7. A lot of advice he gives is completely correct. Yeah. If you have friends who are not interested in supporting your journey, you don't have time for them. And that's a brutal fact of life if you really want to succeed. People will hold you back. Not because they're mean or they don't want you well. It's just, but it's practical. Let's go and meet up for coffee Friday night instead of you working, or instead of meeting a client. Let's go to the movies instead of, come on, James, we can do this instead of that, because we used to go and watch the game. It's better. They will hold you back. Yeah. You will wake up 6 years later and realize, I'm still in the same spot because I stayed with the same people who doesn't have my aspirations in life and what I want to do. Being an entrepreneur is hard, but it can always be extremely rewarding. But I think the biggest challenge people have to go through and learn to live with is you have to accept that you will fail, but you have to learn to fail fast and not let it eat you. What did I learn from it? And take that knowledge and move on to the next one. People always think that I have to succeed at number one. Mm-hmm. Otherwise it's over. It's not over. You just have to keep trying. If you fail 20 times, you are 20 times better than the guy who failed once, because you learn 20 times more. Your company you build afterwards is much stronger than whatever he built at the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would also just say, for the aspiring entrepreneur, don't let, again, back to fear, right? Like Stephen, for example, his we were just talking about it earlier, right? He wants his podcast to be the number one podcast in the world, right? Well, if you want to be the number one in the world at something, you're going to have to be that 24/7 driven maniac who loses his friends, loses his relationships, loses his sleep, loses everything, and just only thinks about that. And that's fine if that's who you are. That's not me. I don't want to be the number one in the world at anything. I want to have a decent business that's running well, that allows me and my family to be taken care of and be provided for. If that means I'm not even in the top 1,000, that's okay. It's still
you're
successful.
Already top 3 in Dubai, though.
I am the top 3. I was the top 3 before I started, yeah. But so I would just say, and again, if that's your desire, if you want to be number one in the world at whatever you want to start, fine, go for it, be driven. But you don't have, to be an entrepreneur, you don't have to have that mentality. And I think that's, unfortunately, the lie of the 21st century in 2025. You have to eat and sleep work, right? And there's no time for anything else. Work is life. No, it doesn't have to be. You can actually be an entrepreneur and work really hard and also just be a normal person. And that's okay. And you don't have to be this big, famous online influencer that also runs a business, that also has 3 Great Danes, that also takes ice baths every morning at 4, that sleeps 3 hours and reads 4 books a day. That. It's not reality, right? Just work hard, start a business.
Yeah. One question I have to follow up on that is, when you say what you just said, do you have a master plan, a vision that you're working against? Or are you taking it a little bit as you go? Because I'm a big believer in, if you set a vision far away, it
scares you.
No, but for me, it's easier to, if I take a step, if I know my vision where I want to go, it's easier for me that my step is in roughly the right direction.
Yeah. I think it's important that you use the word vision and not like target or objective, because a vision by definition is not always super crystal clear, right? So I have a vision, but that vision I think gets clarified kind of as I go, and sometimes ends up looking a little bit different in real life than what it was in the vision, to use that analogy. And that can be project dependent, right? Like sometimes a specific project that I'm working on, I'll get a very clear vision or target for that. Oh, okay, now that I'm actually working on this project that was one little part of this vision, I have a 4-month plan, and that's exactly what's going to happen in 4 months. And I need to break that down into 1 week at a time, and this is who I need to hire and what we need to be able to accomplish that target. So yes, vision is important, but I don't think what I don't want to communicate, from my opinion, is that vision needs to be, a 25-page business plan, bullet pointed. This is exactly what you're going to do every week for the next 3 years, because that's just going to scare you.
The best visions are very crystal clear and short.
Yeah.
Like you just mentioned it. Stephen Bartley, he said, I want to be the #1 podcast in the world.
Right.
That's my vision. Now he knows that everything he does from now, be it on a yearly basis, quarterly basis, monthly basis, weekly basis, is to do a step that aligns with that vision, right? It's a grand vision. Not everyone needs to have a vision. I completely agree with you. But I always believed in, especially if you manage a team, when you build a bigger company, if you are good at telling the team where you want to go, I think the job as a manager in a team, now we're going away from entrepreneurship a little bit, but as a manager, your job is to tell the team, this is where I want to go. What do you need to get the job done? Give them those tools, keep them accountable, but get out of their way. Your job is just to help them to steer that you're on line with the vision. Because if I force you to follow only the path I've already done it, you will not do it well because it's not natural for you.
Yeah.
But if you know where I want to go, you will go in that direction, but on your own path. Now you can have 2-3 teams. They're all ending up in the same spot, but they did it in the best and fastest fashion for how they want to do it, right? Yeah. And like you, like a husband and wife team, partly, you're doing your freelance business, but you're supporting each other. By both of you knowing what you want to achieve, it's a little bit easier to align with those tasks, right?
Yeah, in that way, 100%.
Yeah,
I agree, for sure.
Because what you described is a method I actually liked. You described the vision, mission, objective, strategies, action plan. You described that method, which I actually love working by.
Yeah.
Because if you set those, you don't touch your vision every day. You don't even touch your mission every day.
Yeah, correct.
But when you know your objective, you can set a strategy for doing it. And from that, you can very easily create an action plan. Because I meet way too many entrepreneurs who say, I don't know where to start. You start by writing down what you want to achieve in a certain time frame. The next 30 days, I want to sign 4 clients, or I want to build out a small training program. I want to do something. Now it's quite easy if you sit down to start writing bullet points. What do I need to do to do that?
Yeah.
I need to create maybe 4 videos. I need to talk to 10 clients. I need to get the X leads. I need to send out 20 emails. Those are points. Now you can attach to that the resources. What do I need to get it done? Suddenly it's very easy, for example, to build a budget. What will it cost me? What's the effort? And you have a checklist that you need to follow to go and do it. These things are still fluid. They change based on how successful you are, what's happening along the way. But at least you know when you wake up what you have to go and do. Yeah. And now you don't have to wake up and thinking about the long-term target every day, because what you're doing here is actually aligned with it already. So it was very interesting when you described like that, because it's something I try to teach to young entrepreneurs when we talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's how I used to describe it, right? The vision is where you want to be, and the mission is how you're going to get there. So fine, have a vision, but focus more on breaking down how you're going to actually get there.
For a young entrepreneur today, not young, any age, who's thinking about starting a business, what would be your advice to them from what you are going through yourself on your journey?
Do it. Plan. Don't overplan. And if you currently have an income while you're listening to this, start planning while you still have an income. Don't just quit. Because that monthly income, you don't realize how much you can start doing while you still have an income. You don't realize how much you can do every night for 1 or 2 hours, how much you can do on a Saturday, how much you can do on a Sunday or whatever it is, the time that you have that is going to shorten your time as an entrepreneur to your first income. And that first income, that first revenue that hits for your business is the lifeline that you're waiting for somewhere between 2 months and 2 years, depending on what kind of business you're starting. And so whatever you can do while you still have that income, do it.
If for some reason tomorrow morning, there is no more training business in the UAE, you have to start over for whatever reason. What would be your 30-day plan? What would you do?
Am I starting another training business?
You're starting a new business.
A new business. 30 days. I would start with 1 day to figure out what I'm passionate about. And it doesn't have to be one thing. You can find 4, 5, 6 things that you're passionate about. And then within those areas of passion, do what we call in training a needs assessment. Figure out, is there a need? And you might realize that out of the 6 areas of passion that you have, you can't really find an area of need for the general population in 4 or 5 of them. But I guarantee you there's probably an area of need in one of your areas of passion. And once you find that area of need, identify a specific 1 or 2 problems within that area of need and figure out how you can solve it. That's your first 2 or 3 days right there. Once the problem is clearly outlined, then we already talked about the rest of it. Find a vision, write down the vision, and then go down, break that down into steps and figure out how much you can really get done in 30 days. And don't do it alone. There is nothing wrong with taking a chance, outsourcing, finding another resource, hiring somebody to help you to be able to get more done in those first 30 days.
Good advice. I would have said pretty much very similar to what you just said.
I would also say, have you heard the saying, people overestimate what they can get done in 6 months and underestimate what they can get done in 10 years?
Well, I would say they underestimate what they can get done in 1 week, but they do probably overestimate what they can do. They all talk about, I'm going to create $1 billion company in 2 years.
Yeah.
And then they pass 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks. I am the biggest
culprit.
Culprit of that in my entire life. I do the same mistakes over and over, right? So it's easy to teach them, but it's very easy to fall into the trap of not doing them yourself, right? So I know all these traps myself. I've been through it. I've been doing this for 3 decades. Startups, it's my passion. It's what I love to do. That is why I started a podcast, because I love to talk to entrepreneurs about their journeys. We can discuss what they're working on. We can discuss their challenges. There's nothing more interesting for me than to hear those stories and just have an open discussion on it. What are we talking about, right? So that is my passion project in life, working with entrepreneurs.
Hence,
here we are.
The hustle.
Hence, behind the hustle. Because behind the hustle, it's where it's interesting. Then you know what's going on.
It is.
James, thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Till the next one.
If you like this content and you want to hear more real founder stories, we drop new episodes weekly. Make sure you don't miss that and click subscribe.